Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into our source material to uncover the fascinating, hidden mechanics behind, well, humanity's most universally accepted illusion. It's something you use every single day, something you stress about, and something you literally trade your time for. Yet, you probably rarely stop to think about what it actually is.
So, the source poses a brilliant question right off the bat. What is humanity's greatest invention? Think about it for a second. If I asked you that right now, what's your answer? It's a fun thought experiment. Most of us immediately jump to tangible items that completely changed our physical world.
You might instantly guess fire, obviously. That gave our ancestors warmth, protection, and the ability to cook meals. Or maybe the wheel, which is the ultimate driving force behind trade, commerce, and travel. And while both of these are absolute game changers, they share one very specific trait. They're tangible. They are physical things we can interact with. You can feel the heat of a fire. You can actually touch a wooden wheel. But our source points out that we often overlook something completely immaterial.
And that brings us to the real answer, at least according to the source material. Money. Unlike the wheel or fire, money is completely immaterial. It's literally just an idea. It's an illusion whose value is basically non-existent in the physical world. It only has value because we all collectively agree that it does. The importance we place on it is what makes it real. But, hey, the fact that it's an illusion doesn't make it any less crucial to our survival. To understand why we even needed this illusion in the first place, we have to look back at how we survived before it existed.
All right, let's look at Section 1, the barter problem and the asymmetry of direct trade.
So imagine you only had goods and services to trade. The source explains this concept called the double coincidence of wants. Basically, you had to find someone who had exactly what you wanted and who also wanted exactly what you had. But look at the crazy asymmetry here. On one side, we have a tent maker. They can build an entire living space and trade that massive asset all year round. On the other side, the tomato farmer. Even if they put in the exact same amount of backbreaking work, their tomatoes perish. They can only trade when their crops are in season. Without money, the farmer's wealth literally rots away. There was just no reliable way to store value.
Moving on to Section 2, from bronze to paper, the evolution of currency.
Humanity desperately needed a fix for this massive inefficiency. We needed a standardized medium of exchange. The Our Source traces this incredible evolution for us. We started with the barter system, like we just talked about. To fix the perishing tomato problem, we moved to commodity money. People started trading things everyone wanted, like salt, weapons, or even shells, to act as placeholders of value. But there was a glaring flaw. For money to hold value, it has to be scarce. You can't just pick up sand on a beach and call it money, right? So around 770 BC, the Chinese created the first metal coins, cast in bronze, scarce and easily measurable. A gram of bronze was worth exactly a gram of bronze. Then, in 600 BC, King Alyattes of Lydia set up the first official money mint, stamping images onto gold and silver coins so people knew exactly what they were worth without having to weigh them every single time. Finally, because dragging heavy metals around for international trade was exhausting, kings began issuing paper IOUs. You could trade the paper, trusting you could always swap it back for actual gold.
But honestly, here is where the illusion really takes hold. The source explains that ancient kings quickly figured out the massive power of money, but mining precious metals? Super expensive. So what did they do? Well, they started cheating the system. They slimmed down the coins and mixed cheaper metals right in with the gold and silver. Soon enough, a coin wasn't actually worth the metal it was made of at all. Its value was simply whatever the ruler decreed it was. The illusion was officially born. And that historical shift brings us to the source's exact pivot into modern economics, with one absolutely crucial term: fiat. It's a Latin word, literally translating to "let it be done." Today, fiat is the fancy word we use to describe our modern-day illusion of money. It is a government decree that dictates a currency's value and enforces it as legal tender. It's no longer backed by gold or silver, guys. It's just backed by trust and decree. Let me give you a mind-blowing example from the source to really illustrate this. Take the 10,000 Singapore dollar note. It's the most valuable banknote in circulation today, worth over 7,000 US dollars. But here is the crazy part. The physical piece of paper itself costs less than 20 cents to produce. Yet, because of the illusion of fiat currency, society universally agrees that this 20-cent piece of paper is incredibly valuable, acting as a placeholder for roughly 120 grams of actual gold, solely based on societal belief. No way, right? But it works. Which leads us to Section 3, the inflation problem, when money multiplies. Just like those kings of old, modern governments know they can just create money out of thin air. We're talking casually printing $340 million to fund a single F-22 jet. But the source presents a completely staggering statistic regarding the United States dollar, the global reserve currency. In the wake of the 2020 pandemic shutdowns, to keep the economy from totally collapsing, the U.S. government began printing money at an unprecedented rate. In just an 18-month span, 40% of all U.S. dollars in existence were printed. 40%! Just created out of thin air.
Now, why does this actually matter to you and me? Well, the source breaks the math down perfectly. For money to actually be valuable, the amount floating around needs to reflect the actual economic output of goods and services. When you print massive amounts of money, but the economy's output hasn't actually increased to match it, the purchasing power of your currency drops. The result? Prices skyrocket. The source notes that commodity prices, like lumber, tripled in price over a single year. And it hits your daily life too. Suddenly, the guacamole at your favorite spot like Chipotle costs 20 cents more. It's happening right under our noses.
Let's trace the domino effect of a slowed economy as described in the source. Step 1. An economy slows down, like during the pandemic, and you have fewer customers going out. Step 2. This means fewer tips for waitstaff, who might only be earning $2 to $3 an hour in base pay. Step 3. Because they just aren't making enough to survive, employees quit. And finally, Step 4. Without employees to run the business ultimately goes under. And if people can earn more from stimulus checks than from actually working, the workforce shrinks even further.
Meanwhile, the government solution is often just to pump more money into the system. The source points to this almost inconceivable number, $29 trillion. That was the United States' massive national debt prior to 2020. This debt is primarily obtained through bonds and treasury notes, essentially pieces of paper where the government promises to pay you back with a little interest.
But let's look at what holding that government debt actually means for an investor. Say you buy a 10-year U.S. Treasury bond. The source notes it returns a very small yield, about 1.23%. That means if you invest $1,000 today, by 2031 you'll have made a grand total of $12.30 in interest. The problem, that tiny yield completely fails to keep up with the Federal Reserve's target inflation rate of 2%, and as we know, real inflation is often much higher. So what does this mean? It means that by investing in the government notes of the currency you use every day, you are mathematically guaranteed to lose buying power over a decade.
And that brings us to one of the absolute most powerful statements in the source material. New money steals value from old money. When the Federal Reserve buys back over $1 trillion in bonds from big financial institutions, they pay for it with brand new money created out of thin air. The actual balance in your personal bank account doesn't change. But because there are suddenly trillions more dollars in the system, your old money is silently devalued. Every single second your wealth sits in a fiat currency, it's getting weaker.
All right, let's look at Section 4, Winning the Money Game, Surviving the Illusion.
Okay, I know, this all sounds a bit grim, right? But the source offers a major perspective shift. The key takeaway is this. Understanding that money does not have any intrinsic value will prevent you from trying to store up your wealth in currency. It's all a game, because fiat currency is specifically designed to lose value over time through inflation. Storing your life's work purely in cash is just a losing strategy. Instead, the source suggests using that currency as a tool, a medium of exchange, to acquire assets that will actually appreciate faster than the rate of inflation.
The source really grounds this abstract idea by looking at the stock market. If you measure the Dow Jones, the top 30 U.S. companies since 1997, and you price it in U.S. dollars, it looks like this massive, continuous upward trend of endless growth. But if you take that exact same index and price it in gold, which is a historically scarce asset, the line is basically flat. We're essentially in the exact same place we were back in 1997. The source argues that much of the stock market's explosive growth is partly smoke and mirrors. It's an illusion masking a currency that is slowly dying and losing its purchasing power each and every day.
So we're left with a system built on trust, decrees, and endless printing. This explainer leaves us with a really provocative final thought drawn straight from the source. As the unlimited supply of fiat money continues and the value of currency decreases, will we ever find a way to fix a problem as old as mankind itself? Or will we just let the gap continue to widen forever, trapped within humanity's greatest illusion? It's a fascinating question for sure, and one you should definitely keep in mind the next time you look at the cash in your wallet. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this helped pull back the curtain on how our financial world actually works.